Buenos dias, everybody. I am your host. Well, welcome to the Bamboo Season Podcast. I'm your host, Sober Wellness Coach Dorian Wormsley. And this podcast is sponsored by Dorian Wormsley Wellness, a coaching business to help you build a clear mind and a strong body. Now, may be a little surprise to you, but there was a point in my life where I made some not so good choices and ended up behind bars, as some would say. Small stints in and out of jail in my younger youth days, underage drinking, DUI, taking a friend's car without asking. Those moments were very important for me because they helped shape who I am today. Don't regret anything. Those moments I spent in jail kind of were moments for me to learn and think of who I wanted to become, who I didn't want to be anymore. With that being said, today's guest has definitely had his own share of stories, doing certain things, but this podcast is about transformation and growth. That didn't define who he was, but it did help make him become the man and individual he is today. I'll let him tell a little bit of his story. I'll bring to you my man, Adam Clausen.
Man, Dorian, great to be here.
Yeah, man, I truly appreciate you making time today. I know how busy you and your wife are with the kid and the stuff you do in the community. And I got to thank you because you and Ro had your own podcast, the Gritability Podcast. And that was one of the first podcasts I was on with the space to tell my story and get to know me. So thank you for that. And this is kind of my return. Like, I got to have you on here because those who don't know you might not know your story, know the great work you and your wife do in the community. And your story, honestly, shocked me when I met you. And as we talked on your podcast, you kind of, told a little bit about it. But who is Adam Clausen? What do you do, my man? What is it you do for the community now? Tell us a little bit of who you are.
A little bit about what I do now is my quote day job is I serve as the Director of Innovation and Social Impact for a national nonprofit called Social Purpose Corrections. The mission of that organization is to transform the culture within prisons to bring wellness inside, both for staff and for residents, right? Correctional facilities, institutions of any kind are generally not healthy environments, right? And specifically the U.S. correctional system has produced some pretty abysmal numbers over the last 30, 40, 50 years as the system's gotten bigger. Our rate of recidivism is still ridiculously high, meaning people just cycle in and out of the system. And unfortunately, that's part of my story. And that's one of the reasons why I'm involved with this organization, because my goal is to help break that cycle. I serve in a multitude of capacities. That's my quote unquote day job. But I also have the honor of serving in the Community Legacy Impact Group, where we're focused on affordable housing. And through an impact investment fund, we're seeking to bring 10,000 new affordable housing units to the greater Las Vegas area over the next 5 years. That's like a remarkable number to talk about doing that. And the only way that is going to be possible is through a partnership that we have with a company called Boxable. And they're revolutionizing the housing manufacturing market. They're right here in North Las Vegas. So excited to have recently formed that partnership, to have formed a fund where we're going to bring in outside investment to help us achieve that. But really, we're relying heavily on all of the amazing community partners that we have throughout the Las Vegas Valley. They're already doing incredible work. We know that if we bring in that underlying need, that housing, the stability, that with those supports, the other community members and organizations coming in, that the individuals that we help get into that housing are much more likely to be successful in their transition through whatever, unfortunate life circumstance they're going through, whether that's just a bout of unemployment, whether it's the criminal justice system, whether they're going through recovery. Most people at some point in their life, they're going to hit a rough patch.
Yeah.
Some have the support that they need, family, community around them, but a lot of people don't. And that's really where I had an issue early on when I first got into trouble, I didn't know where to turn. And ultimately, I found myself cycling in and out of that system. And it landed me in prison for a very long time.
Interesting. I do like what they're doing because for me, growing up, when I was younger, we were homeless at one point and living in and out of motels, living in weeklies. My mom would stay in the shelter. And I'm lucky enough to, for whatever reason, not allow that thing shift me too far in the bad way. But as I'm older now, I could reflect on it. It's like, man, a lot of the ways and things I went through as an adult were because of those traumatic experiences of just not having a house. Like to this day, I hate Thanksgiving. It's a time of the year if I really like, I'm gonna say hate. I'm sorry, it's very deep to say, but I'm not super excited for it too often, because growing up in that period of my life, we didn't have Thanksgiving. We didn't have warm meals. We had donated goods from churches and stuff, but I never had that family feel. So one thing you touched on was the work you do in the prisons, correct? What was it? I mean, I know, but for our viewers, you were sentenced 213 years.
That's a ridiculous number, right? It's just absolutely ridiculous.
It is. When I look at your Instagram, Adam213, I'm like, oh, he's from LA. No, 213 is 213 years.
Yeah.
So you were sentenced 213 years in prison. You served 20 and then were released. If you can give us a little, how'd you get sentenced that much?
Background on kind of how we got there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Who are you? What were you doing to get that many years?
I think it's important to go back. As you touched on, you were very fortunate to have gone through those circumstances. You watched your mother struggle, and you were able to escape that environment and still go on to, you had your challenges, but you were able to grow from those experiences. And I think most people, given the opportunity, nobody wants to stay in that environment.
No.
So early on, when I was 6 or 7, my parents divorced. My mom and I took off. It was just the two of us, and she struggled to do it on her own. Same thing. We were in some rough environments.
Where were you living?
This is back in the Midwest, in Wisconsin.
You're from Wisconsin?
Yep.
Never knew that.
Originally from Wisconsin.
Okay.
And, I remember that first apartment that we moved into, and it's like, I went back there not that long ago and I saw the place. I'm like, wow, it doesn't look any different or any better now, right?
Damn.
With the Skate Town USA right behind it, I'd wake up, Saturday morning, 6 a.m., the doors blasted open. They'd be, jamming inside, cleaning the place. And I'd, try and get over there, sneak in the back doors. And anyways, that was the area that we lived in. Was fortunate. We moved out of there. My mom hustled. She worked hard. She went back to school, just wanted a better life for us. But that came at a cost, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't around. So I was exposed to a lot of things I probably shouldn't have been exposed to, a lot of people I shouldn't have been exposed to. But ultimately, 10 years old, my mom finally finishes up school, gets a job offer, decides we're going to start a new life on the East Coast. Transitioning from the Midwest to the East Coast was not easy for a kid. And for me, I just wanted attention, right? And it's funny because like now we talk about all these kids have ADD supposedly, right?
Yeah.
I think young men particularly have energy that they need to find constructive outlets for. And when they don't have it, right, you're going to see them act out. For me, I wasn't really acting out initially. Like I wanted to talk to people. I'm an only child. I come into school, like now I've got people my own age around me that I want to talk to, and I'd get in trouble for that. And I get put out in the hallway, and now I'm labeled a bad kid, a troublemaker. And I started living into that label, right, as being a troublemaker, which all of a sudden now I'm getting into fights. And it's progressing. My behavior, more and more, I'm lashing out. And over time, that just became more and more of an issue. We moved to the East Coast. It's the same thing. I'm kind of an outcast, the new kid, the odd kid, and I just keep acting out. 4th grade, I have a teacher tell me, you're going to end up in prison one day. Not for anything serious that I did, right? But she felt like I was acting up too much. She put that label on me. And again, it sticks with me to this day, right? 10 years old. So I start living into this label that's been put on me. And fortunately, I'm a really good athlete. Play ball, really basketball is what opened a lot of doors for me. I end up going to a college prep high school. They
Nice.
recruit me there. You know, this is common nowadays, but back in the 90s, it wasn't so common.
Yeah.
And I played in some famous leagues like the Sunny Hill League in Philly, got some attention, had doors open for college. Everything's right in front of me. But these underlying issues that have kind of been percolating, getting worse and worse, no one's addressed those. I clearly don't know how to address them, and I don't have other outlets that I need and the support that I need. I don't have a strong male figure in my life, kind of like helping guide me, get me on track. And I end up looking for it in all the wrong places. I'm hanging out with some older guys, end up committing a string of burglaries, a couple of robberies. And ultimately what that was for was so that I had a place to sleep in a motel as I'm drinking 40s. You know what I mean? Like that's my escape. That's my foundation right there.
How old were you when you started doing these string of robberies?
17. I mean, I got involved in crime 15, 16.
Oh, so while you're in high school,
Oh yeah.
playing basketball, you're good, getting recruited, and on the backside or at other days you're out doing these things.
Yeah, I'm out running
It's
around.
like a double
crazy.
life.
Definitely double
Oh,
life.
wow.
FBI shows up to that high school as part of a stolen car ring because we're right on the edge of Philadelphia. And basically the head priest comes out and is like, what are you doing here? They're like, oh, we just want to ask him a couple questions. He said, you got a warrant? I said, no, like it's just a friendly, we're dropping by to ask him some questions. He goes, get the F out of here.
Oh shit.
The priest
holding
tells
it
him
down.
that. And I'm like, okay. And about 5 minutes later, it's like, and you got to go too.
Oh,
And don't come back. So now I'm gone. Now I'm out. And this is what leads to me leaving home. I'm not enrolled in high school for my senior year. All I got to do is graduate to go down to Jacksonville, right? Go play ball. There is no plan B. That's it. So now I'm a high school dropout. I'm drinking every day. I'm not really playing ball. I'm living in this motel. And this is when I commit this string of burglaries and a couple of robberies that ultimately lands me in a state court where the judge decides he's going to teach me a lesson. Everybody in the county jail is telling me, don't worry about it, kid. You're going to be all right. You're a young kid. You got your whole future ahead of you. They're going to give you a slap on the wrist. You're going to go off to school. Nah, no slap on the wrist. 12 years. I get a 12-year sentence and I end up in a state prison. As soon as I hit this yard, here's all the guys that I grew up with, the older guys who have graduated themselves to this next level. They've been in prison a couple years now. I recognize them and it's like, oh, hey, look, you grew up too.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up right there with them. And for 3.5 years, you know what I did? I played a lot of ball. I got a GED, which really it just, required me to go down there, take the test, and I was done. And that was the end of school. Spent some time in a carpentry shop, but I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I'm a kid, 18 to 21, right?
Yeah.
I walk out the door, and thankfully, my mother, despite our strained relationship, she's there to pick me up, right?
Yeah.
So, excuse me, mom picks me up, and as we're driving away from the prison, tears just start streaming down my face. I don't know what this is. I'm just overwhelmed with emotion and it comes pouring out of me. It's like everything that has led up to this moment, all that time I spent on the inside, all the things that I hadn't dealt with just come bursting out. And I remember vividly my mom, she's like gripping the steering wheel and she's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, nothing. And I just bottled it all back up, stuffed it inside. And what I heard when she said that was anger, but that's not what it was. My mom was just scared, right? She didn't know how to deal with what she was seeing, what I was feeling, and she had no one to even refer me to, right? Like there were no resources. I walked out of prison and it's like, hey, good luck. That was it, the end of that road. But I'm on parole. For me, in my mind, I have this view of authority, any authority figure, specifically police, who I'm lucky they didn't kill me when they showed up to arrest me the first time. That was a whole nother situation. But I don't have a relationship. It's purely adversarial. So my mind of going in to report for parole on this state parole is never a comfortable situation. Like I get within 5 blocks of this place and like the anxiety, I feel the tension. And yet this is where I got to go and report every month. And it's like this person in my mind who is just waiting for me to do something so they can send me right back. So if I'm being honest about it, you know, all of those things that previously I had been masking, that had never been dealt with, that I had just bottled up inside, I went right back to doing the same things. Like within a few short weeks, maybe a month, you know, and I had a job through a family friend. So I'm like toughing it out, but it's not working. And that first bad day, I'm like, F this, I'm out of here. And I was off and running right back in the same cycle. Only this time, some of the people that I grew up with were a few years along, right? I'm 21 now. They're over in the city. They're in the mix with everything. And they're basically like, we got you if you want to come over here. And here you go. Here's this first package. And it's a bunch of E, it's a bunch of Coke, it's a bunch of ketamine. It's like, yeah, we got you, whatever you want. Because you're a good dude. You're a stand-up guy, right? Like, I have lived up to this criminal label that has put me in good standing within the criminal community.
That's crazy.
Right? And so they've given me all this and I'm off and running. And for a lot of people that I grew up with who are now in college, they're going to, you know, UPenn, they're going to Villanova, St. Joe's, Drexel, downtown, all these great schools that I'm done. Like nobody wants to even have a conversation with me. No employer, because I have no employment history. I have no real education. I have no skills. Nobody wants to deal with me. So I'm like, this I feel is my only option. And they, my peers, many of them who are doing the right thing, look at me and they go, oh, wow, you've got the life from where they're sitting.
Yeah.
In school, you know, struggling it out as college students. They're looking at me, you know, in all the bars, all the clubs. I'm living this life. Like I am in the limelight. But I am so lost. I am so alone. I am so broken at this point, and I don't know how to fix it. There's not enough drugs. There's not enough alcohol to you know, cover it up, to mask it, to numb it. And eventually this catches up to me because that parole officer decides, you know, I walk in one day and they're waiting for me. Like it's hard to get in parole, right? Like there's bulletproof glass. They buzz you through the door and I come in and they turn me around this corner and it's like SWAT team again is waiting on me. Boom, jack me up against the wall. I'm like, whoa, guys, like really, it's not that serious. Like there's just one of me. And they take me down the hallway out to this waiting car, throw me in the back of the car. And I'm like, oh, this is it. I'm going back. I knew this was going to happen. And ultimately it's a judge who decides to teach me a lesson, give me 90 days violation in the county jail. This is Camden County, just outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
At the time, this is the late 90s. Camden is Beirut, right? It's like the murder capital of the world. Like this is the worst county jail you could possibly be in. And the judge thinks he's teaching me a lesson. I'm going to send this young white kid in this place and he's going to get straightened out. First of all, that's not the kind of lesson judges should be advocating for, even if I did have a bit of an attitude at the time. But I go in there, and these are all people I know. These are my people, right?
Yeah.
Because remember, like, I belong to this community. I have a good reputation and standing amongst the criminal community. So that 90 days was not difficult in the way that that judge intended. And it should have been a time for me to reflect. But what I watched happen, or what I experienced, was my car that was outside gets towed away. It then gets impounded and repossessed. Car's gone. My vehicle's gone. My phone gets turned off, disappears. It was on me when I was arrested. My clothes, everything in my possession, somehow miraculously disappears. So that's gone. The house that I have with my partner at the time gets sold out from underneath us. Because remember, I'm living on the fringes. Everything's like shady, right? So my house is gone. He does me a favor, taking all of my stuff, throwing it basically in garbage bags, and just collecting everything, throwing it in the back of a box truck, which he pulls up to his warehouse, dumps out the back on the warehouse floor, so that when I get out, it'll be there waiting for me, which it was. Like, I vividly recall a piece of the bed sticking out the edge of a speaker.
Yeah.
And I'm like, good looking. Took really good care of my stuff, man. But I walk out to this to literally nothing. When they called me to pack it up, because you got a bedroll, you got to bring your mattress, all this. So I walk it out. They call my name. I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let me get out of here. I'm still waiting for the other foot to drop because I have an open DWI over in Philadelphia.
Oh, shit.
And thankfully, they're not communicating.
Yeah.
At the time, there's still a little bit of a disconnect, but I'm thinking they're going to be outside waiting for me. So as I come out, they're telling me, we don't have your clothes. You're going to have to go out in flip-flops, bus pants, and a T-shirt. And I'm like, okay, what? Don't care. Just let me out the door. And they're like, oh, don't forget this. It's a bill for the cost of your incarceration.
Damn.
They were charging per day back then, right?
Damn.
So I walk out the door literally with nothing. I've watched my entire life as I know it dissolve over the last 90 days, and I have a bill. So now I'm in debt as well, and I owe court fees and whatever else they've tacked on. I'm like, okay, realistically, what am I going to do now? They open up the back gate. I look left, I look right. I'm like, the McDonald's is right up the street, and I take off running in my flip-flops. I get to the McDonald's, and this poor girl who's standing outside smoking a cigarette looks at me. She's like, oh, are you okay? Like, she's just taking pity on me. I was like, can I get a cigarette? And can I get a quarter for the phone, or 35 cents, whatever it is? They still had pay phones back then, right? And I pick up the phone and I call who would become one of my co-defendants, guy that I did time with in the state, one of those good guys. Hey man, I'm out. He's like, I'll be right there. Excited to come and get me. Over the course of the next 3 weeks, I committed a string of robberies, 9 robberies. In my young, immature thinking, this is how I rationalized it, that all of these people were involved in illegal activity to some degree, one or another, right? They're involved in illegal activity. They should know better. They're in the game. So they're not really victims, right?
Yeah.
This is my thinking at the time. Clearly, it's flawed thinking, no doubt. But this is how I rationalize it. And I go on this robbery spree to basically try and get back on my feet, ultimately with the goal of, I want out. I want to get away. Like, just get away from everything, from all of this. I need a fresh start. I got a friend who's down in Florida. If I can just get off parole, if I can finish this out, I can get out of here, right? That's my thinking. And I only have a short time left on parole, so I'm like, I can do this. Let me just get through. This is how I'm going to get there, through this illegal activity, because I don't want to sell drugs anymore. That was a whole nother story that kind of collapsed. There were drug investigations going on. Everything else is going crazy. So I'm like, I'll be safe over here. Clearly not good thinking. So let me make a point here. I deeply regret all of those things that I did, all of it, the way that I was living, the people that I hurt, thinking that they were not themselves being victimized by what I was doing. Flawed thinking, right? There were people who were involved in that illegal activity because they felt like they had no choice, right? And I further victimized them. And then when you take into account all of the other people who would then be affected after my arrest, my family, my friends who were threatened, all of them who got drug into this, man, like we don't think about those collateral consequences, all of the people who are affected by our actions, which is why I always caution people when they say, oh, I'm doing this. This is me. Let me worry about me. Well, generally your actions it's not in isolation what you're doing. You're going to affect other people. And I saw that after we were arrested, SWAT team again. And ultimately this time it just came down to, thank God, they showed up. There were laser lights, like it was like the movies. And in my mind, I just didn't have enough bullets to get out of there because I wasn't going back to prison. But I didn't see a way for me to make it out of that alive, which is why I made that decision. I'm like, well, we'll give it up to fight another day. And what happens over the course of the next few minutes, few hours, is that guy that came to pick me up ultimately starts talking to detectives.
Oh, shit.
Because he realizes I'm not going back to prison either, but I have a different plan. I'm going to tell them whatever they need to know. And he tells them, listen, I have information regarding drug trafficking, links to organized crime. Let me talk to the DEA, the ATF, the FBI. They're going to want to hear what I have to say. And there was a big investigation going on at the time. It's interesting. I had him on our podcast. His name is Joey Merlino, supposedly the head of the Philadelphia mob. And that's who they had been building a case against. He had beat them once already. They were desperate to convict him. And a drug conspiracy case, for those who don't know, doesn't take much. It's basically somebody saying, yes, I got drugs from this person. If you can prove like circumstantial evidence, it's pretty much a done deal. It's like so loose and what's actually needed to convict someone is so minimal. That's what they were after. And the reality is that relationship didn't exist. But they wanted me to say that it did. And it was all because this guy who was trying to get a deal for himself was putting all this stuff out there. And the FBI got very excited and they took our case and charged us with all these multiple charges, including firearm offenses that they told me when they came to talk to me, we're going to give you a couple 100 years unless you cooperate with us. I'm like, listen, man, I'm not new to this. I know this game, right? You can threaten me all you want. You ain't got nothing. Well, not quite the truth. I go back, I look in the law books. I'm like, wow, they can really do this? I've never even heard of this. These mandatory minimums that they can use on these firearms. Because there was a firearm present in each one of these robberies. So this becomes apparent that, okay, they can do this. And we spend the next year fighting this case, going through pretrial. Toughest year of my life to date, of my existence. Like, just an absolutely miserable experience, what they put my family through, what they put my friends through, to threaten everyone, to drag them in, threaten charging them, even though they weren't involved in anything, just to put pressure on me. And many of those relationships never recovered, to be honest. But I look back, I caused all of that. And that is what I regret most, right? I didn't have any idea of the people who were affected by my actions. And looking back now, yeah, I deeply regret all of that. What I do not regret is my decision to go to trial, even though I knew that there was a very good likelihood that I was going to end up with this life sentence. But in my mind, it had to stop somewhere, right? I wasn't going to put someone else in that position where their family was then suffering and they ultimately face that life sentence. Like, at some point, it's got to stop, right? Because this is the only way that the federal government makes cases now. They are dependent on people cooperating. Just give us somebody else, give us somebody else. And that's how the system just churns. And it comes at a price, right? There's a human cost to that, because once you do that, like, there are aspects of you that are never going to fully recover, right? Like, you have to sacrifice your personal character, your integrity. Those were things that I was not willing to do. And maybe that part of that is remnant of, being a good guy in those criminal circles. That was one thing that was, kind of um, uh, just that sunk in early on, that you don't tell on your friends. But in my mind, at this point, like I decided, like this is the stand that I have to take, and if it results in me getting a life sentence, and that's what it's going to be. Like we'll deal with that as it comes. Ultimately, that's what happens, right? Go to trial. Over the course of a week, they bring in all these people. It's just ugly. But the jury, our system doesn't work the way that people think it works. It's really very one-sided, and the government has all these resources. So at the end of this, I'm found guilty on all 27 counts. 9 counts of attempted robbery or conspiracy to commit robbery, 9 robberies, and 9 use of a firearm. So for the robberies, right, I get 8 years. The robberies and the conspiracies. For the actual offense, I get 8 years. For the guns being involved, I get 5 for the first and then 25 for each additional. And they all have to run consecutive to each other and to the underline. So I get 5 plus 25 plus 25, 205 years, plus the original 8. That's how we get to 213 years.
How old were you at this point?
24 years old.
At 24 years old, you got sentenced 213 years.
Yep. And they just signed my life away.
What was your initial emotion? Did you drop down and cry? Did you?
No,
what
no
the
tears.
fuck? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do mine. Did you?
So it's interesting. People ask me, how was I at the sentencing? Well, the sentencing was like months later.
Yeah.
I already knew because of the mandatory minimums. There was no way around that. I knew when the jury verdict came back, that was the time. As they're reading the verdict, I'm like, I hear it, count 1, count 2, count 3.
Ooh.
Every third one is a gun.
Yeah.
So I know that's the mandatories. By the time they get to count 9, I'm like 55. We're at 55 years. I got a life sentence. Like, we're done. So I kind of tuned out at that point. We go through, all of my counts are guilty. My next co-defendant, all of his counts. My third co-defendant, guilty, 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 not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. He gets acquitted on 6 of the 9 counts.
Oh, wow.
And nobody ever wants to talk about that because now we have an issue. And this is why the government had kind of like glazed over it. Like it was the same witnesses testifying against him. Why did the jury not convict him? Right? Later it comes out, the jury says, well, listen, everybody in this case was kind of dirty, but he was so young. He was so innocent looking. We decided to cut him a break. But 2 jurors said this, had we known how much time you guys were facing, we never would have convicted you. They said that. They're like, there wasn't enough evidence. And I'm like, okay, reality is I did all of these things. Should I have received 213 years? No, that's just absolutely ridiculous.
What was the plea deal?
Cooperate and basically, we'll give you a chance to walk out the door.
How many years?
For what?
What do they give you like a deal? Like, hey, because you say you went to trial.
Yeah.
So usually don't they give you like a plea deal instead?
Usually, yeah.
Oh, they didn't give you one?
This was an all or nothing. It was you cooperate with us.
Or you're going to
and give us what we think you can say. And I had an attorney early on who told me, because I told him, I was like, I don't even have any of this information. I don't know why you allowed them to question me like this. He's like, listen, you don't have a choice here. You either cooperate or you're going to do life.
So you could even cooperate if you wanted to, because you didn't really have information.
No. They were very clear on what they wanted me to say. Whether it was true or not.
Okay.
We just want you to say it because I was in proximity, right?
Yeah.
I was in a position where I could have said, hey, this is what was actually what we were doing, but it wasn't. That wasn't the truth. So regardless, and that happens every day in this system, like people admit to things that they didn't do, and people try and put other people in positions of things that they know they didn't do. Our system is set up to perpetuate that. It's not to find the truth of who actually did what. So this is my experience with the federal government, which is
Yeah.
very different from the state.
So just real quick to chime in on what you just said about they try to get you to, in a sense, plead down to something.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, that happened to me also. You know, I took a friend's car without asking, and her parents decided to press charges because I totaled the car. I was drunk. I was on Molly. And they tried to hit me with Grand Theft Auto.
Yep.
And I was like, Grand Theft Auto? This is my friend's car who I've used before. Granted, I took it without asking, but I'm like, there's no way it's Grand Theft Auto. But that's the plea they gave me. Like, hey, you can take Grand Theft Auto, go to trial. You lose, you have the, you know, go to prison, you'll get, I forgot how many years. Or you can plead to unlawful taking of a vehicle. We'll give you 2 years, but you'll do 1 year probation. And I took that. I had a public defender. I didn't know. Whatever. And I took it. They gave me the 2 years probation. And when I went to check in with my PO, he wasn't there. I called him. He wasn't there. He was like, hey, I'll have somebody come check out your house. Don't worry about it. This and that. I'm not knowing how it works. I'm not even taking it serious, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, cool. I'm out. My friends, they call and say I have a curfew 6 to 6. And I'm like, all right, I guess. How you going to know? Sure enough, they showed up to the house. I wasn't home. Like, where you at? I was at a friend's house. She was like, all right, well, you need to get home. You're supposed to be here at 6 p.m. I'm like, fuck, it's serious. A few days later, I make sure I'm home, 5:30, right? They come 6 o'clock on the dot, knocking on the door. She comes in, checks my mom's house, drug tests me. As soon as she's about to leave, she says, you have a cell phone? I'm like, yeah. She's like, let me see it. And I'm like, fuck, I'm done. She opens my phone, goes through. She's like, turn around, and arrested me right there for my mom in her living room. My mom starts crying. And in the phone, I knew I had text messages. I was selling drugs. I was out late. Pictures of me at the club when I was supposed to be. Yeah, they pulled it up in court too during my hearing. They violated me, probation. And you know, you can't get bail. You know, you got to wait until the judge sees you.
Yep.
So I'm in there. I'm in jail. I end up seeing people I went to high school with. It's just embarrassing. So then I'm there. I finally see the judge. And you know what's crazy? I saw later in life, she was in the newspaper for some, like, not being such a good judge. I don't know. Maria Gonzalez. But anyways, yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying it was my situation, but the biggest thing she hated was curfew. So they're in court, my public defender and the DA, they're going back and forth. The public defender's, you know, trying to get me out. The DA pulls the picture up of me in the club with a bottle. And he's like, Your Honor, he's supposed to be at curfew. Here he is in the club. He's in his phone selling prescription medications. And the judge was just like, you know what? I heard enough. I'll give you 1 chance. 30 days in jail. And once you get out, you're back on probation. At that point, I already did 3 weeks. I was like, oh, okay. So I got 1 week left. She's like, nah, starting today. And it's similar to your story when you got out, when you said you had no clothes. So I went to jail. I get out on New Year's 2016 at 2 a.m. When I went into jail 2 months before, I had just basketball shorts and stuff. So when I got out, it's fucking cold. It's January in Vegas. I had just the chanclas, the orange boxers, and a t-shirt. I'm walking on the strip looking to find a cell phone. I run into a cop. I'm like, hey, man, I just got out. Can I use your phone to call somebody? Get the fuck out of here. What are you doing down here? Going off on me. I'm like, bro, I just got out. Like, I just need help. I ran. Went to a nearby hotel, called my mom. She picked me up. That was my jail story. But I still want to, we have time. I want to talk about.
Wow.
Yeah, man. And I agree with a lot of stuff you're saying when I just feel like one thing that pissed me off, this was around the time there was this kid in Stanford, right? White kid who got caught taking advantage of a woman that was drunk.
Yep. Remember
And
it.
he got 3 months.
Yep.
6 years probation or 6, something, whatever. He only did 3 months in total.
Sure.
I was like, damn, bro, I did 2 months. I took a friend's car. It's crazy how it's, I don't know. Obviously, there's different reasons behind it, but for some reason that math don't make sense. And I remember when I got out of jail and I heard about that, I used to be so pissed off. Like, I admit I did what I did, but the fact that I did 2 months and this guy did 3 and he was taking advantage of a fucking drunk woman, I took a friend's car, something just don't make sense. But here we are. So back to you. You get sentenced 213 years for doing 9 robberies with a gun. Young 24-year-old handsome Adam. How did you only serve 20 what happened for you to only serve 20 and get out?
Only 20.
My bad, man. You're right. You're right. 20, hey, you're right. Because 20, I think when I met you almost 2 years ago, I think you were what, just a year out? What year did you get out?
I got out August 12th, 2020.
Okay, so I met you about 2 years after you got out.
Got here in Vegas September.
So you did 20 years. Long.
20 years,
Two
yeah.
decades is a long time. 2000 to 2020, a lot happened.
Oh, God.
9/11, Obama became president. Trump became president.
Yeah, Obama, we thought like the doors were going to open.
Yeah.
We were going to get all this relief.
Cell phones.
Nothing
internet
happened.
Social media.
Yep.
So much happened in that 20 years.
Yeah.
I went to high school. I'm just kidding. But so you did your 20 years. I'm sure it was rough, man. Like to go out 24, that's like a good portion of your life.
Yeah.
And what transpired or happened for you to get out after serving 20 out of 213?
So
We got
interesting.
We got about 15 minutes.
Yeah, when I came back, right after that jury verdict was read, we were in the holding tank in the back. It's the U.S. Marshals. Myself and my two co-defendants are in there, and we're all shell-shocked, right? None of us are talking, and I just start laughing. They both look at me like, oh, God, he's lost it.
Oh,
Like they're concerned, right? And I'm like, man, listen, I was just thinking about a buddy of mine, Kevin, this guy who we were in state prison with. He had a brutal, brutal case, double homicide. Likelihood of him ever getting out, like very, very remote, right? And this dude was miserable every day. Like you'd see him coming, you'd be like, oh, damn, here comes Kev. Like, and people would try and duck him. And I used to like tell everybody, like, come on, man, give dude a break. Like, I can't imagine what it's like to walk in his shoes, right? Having that life sentence. It's got to be tough. I could say how I'd like to respond to it. And that's with all situations in life, right?
Yeah.
Like we can idealize, or imagine how we would want to deal with a situation, but until you're in it, you don't know. And it was in that moment that I realized I have this life sentence. It's not going to break me. I'm not going to be miserable every single day. I'm going to use this time to figure it out. You know what I mean? Figure out who I am. And I'm going to hold on to hope that someday I'm going to get another chance. This is not the end. We've got appeals. We've got all of these opportunities. It's all good. I'm not going to be Kev. That's what I'm laughing about. And they're like, yeah, okay. Like, this is serious, man.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I spend the first 10 years in a United States penitentiary. And because of the time that I had, like I showed up there, people already knew who I was. And that's generally how it is. And when you go to higher level security, it's just, there's a different protocol. There's different expectations. And the level of violence that exists in those environments, believe it or not, keeps things running pretty orderly and smoothly. Like you either act right or you get dealt with, right? But I came in there 24 years old, 213 years with a bit of a chip on my shoulder and a bit of a reputation. And somehow I was able to carve out space. I never clicked up with any group organization. I was friendly with all of them. And there's certain lines, like there's racial lines when you get to that level. There are certain things that can't be crossed and certain ways that you have to live. But I was able to really like walk the line, straddle the line in some cases. Part of that was early on, I came in contact with my first mentor, a guy named Kevin McTaggart. Unfortunately, he's still doing time. He's almost 40 years in at this point.
Ooh.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. And he's done some amazing things while inside, including saving a staff member who would have been killed otherwise. But early on, Kev became a mentor. He was up in the gym. He was teaching classes up there. Juan Carlos Santana, Paul Chek, like early guys in the functional movement training space. Like we had access to education materials, believe it or not, VHS tapes. Remember those?
Yeah.
VHS, DVDs, books, all of these on all aspects of health, wellness, nutrition, And I just poured myself into them. So while I'm going on this introspective journey, figuring out who I am, I find my passion for fitness. I get a mentor, a guide, someone who's got so much respect in this environment. Everybody listens to him. He's got the respect of staff. Like he can approach a warden and the wardens are like, Mr. McTaggart, what can I do for you today? Like it's like that. And this guy sees something in me worth investing in. And in doing that, he carved out space. Like real estate, depending on where you are, has different values. In those environments, there is a very high value on small pieces of property. He carved out physical space in that gym for me to work with him and ultimately to take over and begin my own classes. When he left, I took over all those classes. So over years, I have taught literally thousands of classes on all aspect, anything you can imagine for health, wellness, fitness, weight, unweighted, stability balls, medicine balls, all different aspects of training. And one of the best is, being out in the rec yard, 6 a.m., yoga class with like a who's who of American gangsters, right? Like, and one of those moments where, downward dog, I'm looking around, I'm like, if anybody had a camera right now and we're snapping pictures of this, like this would be like E news, right? Entertainment news. Unbelievable to see all these dudes out there, these hardcore gangsters doing a yoga class at sunrise right on the yard. But that's what it is.
Yeah.
And, was very fortunate to have that experience. That first 10 years really shaped me, allowed me to find myself. 9 years in, I get hooked up with this woman because this other bodybuilder who comes in, he was a runner-up, Mr. New Jersey. Of course, they send him to me because at this point, like my whole identity has shifted. I'm not that street guy that I used to be. Like I'm the fitness guru now. When guys come in and they want to get right, they send them to me. They're like, oh, go see Adam. Like he's on that health kick stuff. Like he don't get high no more. He don't drink. He don't smoke. I gave up all of those things in prison, 2005. Made a conscious decision. I'm done. I can't keep doing the things that I've been doing. And found my constructive outlet within fitness. And through that, found mental peace, stability. I'm in one of the most violent places in the country, maybe on the planet, and I'm at peace. Like, what does that say about how chaotic my previous life was, right? That I find peace in that prison. But that's the reality of it. And to be honest, when this guy came to me, he's like, hey, I want to introduce you to this girl. Like, it's my girl's best friend. It's her cousin. And why don't you talk to her? And I'm like, no, I'm good. He's like, you're good. You're not good, dude. You got a life sentence.
Yeah.
You need to talk to a woman. Like, got this beautiful woman for you. What's wrong with you? And I was like, nah, I'm cool. I have cut off all the negative aspects of my previous life, all those relationships. I'm just focused on me. Well, he keeps at it and, he's like, listen, she just wants to email. Why don't you email her? It was very self-serving, right? He wanted his girl to have someone to ride up with her, 3.5-hour drive back and forth. That's all it was about. Well, we connect over these emails. I've never seen what she looks like. I just know that she's into fitness too. 2008, Miss Fitness, New Jersey.
Ro was?
Yep.
Oh shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Real deal, man. So we connect and I'm like, wow. This is the woman that I could see myself with. Like if I were to get out tomorrow, man, like I would want to be in a relationship. Like this is the kind of relationship I've always wanted. Like this is, because I don't know what healthy is at this point, right? I've never had a healthy relationship. I'm like, I could see this. And I start picturing what that life might look like. And I'm like, oh God. Anyways, she eventually comes up for that first visit. That's it. She kept coming up every week thereafter. And we had some hard conversations early on about what the reality of my situation was. And she chose, to basically put her life on hold in a lot of respects to invest in our relationship and doing everything that she could to help me get that second chance, to ensure that that door would open at some point. So fast forward, I transfer, I go to a medium security facility where I find some mentors, University of Pittsburgh professor, a guy named Dr. Tony Gaskew. Through him, I learned for the first time in my life that I'm actually smart.
Mm.
Remember that teacher that I had back in fourth grade said
Yeah.
you're going to end up in prison? That equated to you don't belong here, you're not smart, you're a troublemaker. Now all of a sudden I find myself in a mixed classroom outside University of Pittsburgh, students in there having, debates, critical discourse with these students. And I'm like, okay, like I belong here. And I started to believe that. Also at the same time, I got introduced to life coaching. We had an associate warden who came in, brought in a coach training program, was insistent that I be a part of it. And I'm like, I don't do programs. I have my space up here in rec. I do my classes. Somebody wants to come to my space, right, where I'm comfortable. You can meet me up here. She's like, no, you're going to come down here. You belong down in education. And that's really where I met Dr. Gaskew as well, a guy named Dr. Patrick Williams. He was at the forefront of the positive psychology movement. Pat became the sponsor of our life coach training program through the Institute for Life Coach Training, first program of its kind in the nation. Over the course of the next 10 years, I trained and led a community of incarcerated coaches who transformed not only the culture in that prison, but who then went on to do some amazing things all across this country. I credit those men as being my supports in becoming the person that I was always meant to be. Like without those men, without those relationships, and without the tools that we had to coach one another, guide each other on really, coming up with a vision for the future, mapping it out with very specific goals, and then giving the constant acknowledgement, the validation, the feedback that we needed, what's working and what's not working, right? Like giving you the hard truth sometimes when you don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
It's easy to have yes people around you, but when you have people who are truthful with you, that's what I had. And those to this day are still some of my closest friends. I credit them with helping me to become the person I am today. And, with them, my wife, together, like we came together in 2009, and over the next 11 years, we had to grow together. We had to develop strategies for our relationship to keep us healthy, to keep us progressing so that we would be ready for the future that we envisioned, because we believed that a second chance was coming, but we knew it was still a ways down the road. And there were some opportunities. 2016, the clemency lottery that the Obama administration did, like you get clemency. Like
Oh, wow.
There was no rhyme or reason,
Yeah.
right? It was really random. And they put out these lists. They're like, oh my God, a new list is out. So everybody on the outside is waiting for these lists.
Damn.
Talk about a stressful time. So my petition died on President Joe Biden's desk. He was the VP at the time. He refused to send it forward
Oh, wow.
to give me that opportunity. I'm a political liability, right? A repeat violent offender. Why would you give someone like me a chance? But ultimately, President Trump, 2018, signs the First Step Act, which those mandatory minimums that I had, that 213 years, 205, they're no longer legal.
Oh, shit.
You can't sentence anyone that way. Problem is, and this is what often happens with the law, it's not retroactive. So myself and the 3,000 other individuals who have been sentenced this way, too bad, you're stuck. Fortunately, as part of that First Step Act was what's called compassionate release, another mechanism that just gives you a doorway in. And part of that is if the law has changed, you can get back into court. But you also have to prove extraordinary and compelling reasons.
Yeah.
So over the course of that second 10 years, when I was at that medium, I did a lot of things that had never been done before, namely leading that community, organizing national reentry events, bringing people from all over the country into that prison to see what we were doing, building a support network of individuals who have influence on the outside and within the system, who ultimately went to bat for me. And it was so overwhelming that the judge said, you know what? I'm going to vacate this sentence. And after another hearing, my attorney, who's a former federal bank robber, I should add that note, nobody to better advocate for me than someone who has really been in my shoes. He's now a Georgetown law professor. He was a frequent guest at the White House in 2018 as they were crafting these reforms. So huge respect to him. He became my chief legal advocate for many, many years, worked very closely with my wife to help make this happen. Goes in, advocates for me. I get immediate release. That immediate release results in my wife pulling up to the prison where she has come to see me for the last 11 years. She pulls up to the door, car is packed. It's literally like, it's a movie. I walk out the door that she has walked in to come and see me, walk out, I get to embrace her for the first time, you know, without someone who telling us, break it up.
Damn.
That's enough of that. And we hop in the car and get to start our trek across the country to come out here to Las Vegas to start a whole new life. And the last 4 years have been absolutely amazing. A lot of hard work to get established, to not have any credit history, to have to learn all the technology, to have built a number of businesses. Some of those have failed rather spectacularly. There have been a lot of challenges. I've met a lot of resistance. People who see me and go, man, you don't look like you have that background. And then when it comes up to it, right, there's certain situations where they're like, we acknowledge what you've accomplished, everything that you've did. That's great, but still not ready to let you in here. Which, as we just renewed our lease a couple months ago, 4 years out, have pretty strong ties in this community with a lot of local leaders. Everybody knows my story. I lead with it. I feel like I have a responsibility. I was given this second chance. Everything that I do, you know, hopefully will open up doors for others. My success ultimately will be a determining factor for whether others get that same opportunity. So I carry that responsibility, and I try and open doors when possible. But a lot of times, even those that are holding our lease acknowledge it. You've done great. We love your story. We don't want you on the lease. Like, we don't want to set a precedent here.
Yeah.
So knowing those challenges that exist for everyone coming out of the system, knowing that I needed the mental health support, I needed greater substance misuse treatment services available to me when I came out that first time. And I needed more family support who understood what I was going through, what I was experiencing, who could coach me through it. My wife is equipped. She is a certified coach as well. We took the coaching program together. She trained her community on the outside, strong prison wives and families, while I led my community on the inside. It's because of those tools that we have to be able to support and hold each other accountable to things that we say. That's what allowed our relationship to thrive both inside and throughout the transition back into the community. Now I'm in a position, because of my experiences, to hopefully better support others who are going through that same experience, both inside and as they come back into the community, knowing what they need and their loved ones. So that's a focus that my wife and I, a need that we try and fulfill. We serve as advocates. We've spent plenty of time in DC. We work with other advocacy organizations and individuals. We're finally doing something for ourselves that speaks to our passion. We see each other at the gym all the time. That is still my constructive outlet. If I'm not there every day, if I miss a couple days, I'm off, right? I know that my mental health is dependent on that. And I also know that my relationship thrives when my wife are connected in that way, supporting one another in our physical health. And it's a place of connection. Like, we enjoy being in the gym together, right?
I see it every time I see you guys there. I don't know if I'm going to cut you off. I just run out of time. we're going to have to get you back because there's a lot more that you do for the community, a lot more to your story. Shout out to your wife, Ro. You guys are amazing. Like I said, I met you guys about almost 2 years ago now. Time flies. And I see you guys at the gym almost every day at some point.
Yep.
And you guys get it in. It ain't no bullshit. It's crazy and amazing to watch, to see you guys. And I just want to thank you, man, for sharing your story. That's literally the definition of transformation and growth, man. Like 213 years to do a huge amount of 20 at a pivotal age in life and coming out to a whole new world, like, and now to grow into the man you are, the husband, the father, you do have a son, and the stuff you do in the community, man. I truly appreciate you. And thank you again, because you were one of the first podcasts that allowed me to come on and tell my story. Yeah, thank you for making the time for coming on here. If there's any piece of advice you can give somebody who's going to hear the story to help them transform and grow as a person, what would it be?
To help transform and grow as a person.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to do the difficult work on yourself, right? We generally avoid those things that are difficult. That's why I love those tough workouts. They force you to face those things head on, and make that a practice in your life. If there's something that you don't want to do that thing first, because it's generally the thing that you need to do.
Ooh, that's fire. Love that. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Bamboo Season podcast. Like my man Adam said, do the hard work first. Remember, you got to be a bison, baby. Go towards the storm. Face your shit. 2 words. Keep growing.